Alright, Algebra 1, today we're going to go ahead and do lesson 10-3, solving quadratic equations. Pretty easy lesson because we're just back to the basic solving. I'm not going to make you do the 2-column proofs like I did before, so you guys don't have to worry about that. So let's just go ahead and solve these. So how would you get t squared by itself? Just like we normally did way back when we were solving the easy ones. To get 25 to this side, got to add it. So now I've got t squared equals 25. Well, how do I get rid of a squared? What's the opposite of squared? Square roots. So let's take the square root of each side. Square root of t squared is just now t by itself. The square root of 25 is 5, because 5 times 5 is 25. So the square root of 25 is 5. Now here's the clicker with these. There's always going to be two solutions. So make sure next to that solution that you guys get, you put in a plus and a minus. And you're done. And if you have to, plug it back in. 5 squared would be 25, minus 25, 0. Negative 5 squared would be positive 25, 25 minus 25, 0. They both work. That's why you have the two solutions. Okay, this one over here. What is your first step? Subtract that 12. So now you've got 3 n squared equals 0. Divide by 3. N squared equals 0. Square root, n equals 0. Notice I don't need to put, excuse me, a plus or a minus there. It's just n equals 0. Okay, this one here. Subtract your 32 over. So now we've got 2, subtract that 32 over. So now I've got 2 g squared equals a negative 32. Divide by 2. So now I've got g squared equals a negative 16. Square root it. So now I got g equals the square root of a negative 16. Now you guys know from years and years of education that you cannot take the square root of a negative number. But you actually can. And this is something that the book isn't showing you, so I want to make sure that you guys know what this is. So what is the square root of 16? It's 4. Because I have a negative radical, it's an imaginary number. So I would write this as 4i. Because the square root of a negative number is I. Because it's square root, plus or minus. So my g equals plus or minus 4i. And that is what I am going to be looking for. Okay, that is what I am going to want to see when we have those negative radicals. Okay, so let's say I had another one. For instance, let's say my equation was x squared plus 9 equals 0. Subtract your 9. X squared equals a negative 9. Square root. Again, now we have x equals the square root of negative 9. Again, can't have the negative number in there. Okay, it's imaginary. So what is the square root of 9? 3. Because of that negative, I, plus or minus. That is all that's to it. Okay, when you get down to 19, so when we get to 19, it's going to ask you to write the equation and then solve. So, find the side of a square with an area of 250 meters squared. If you heard that noise, the dog thought he had to be my assistant today. So, I want to write the equation. Okay, I want to write the equation. So, my equation of this would be area, okay, equals s squared. Whenever you have a square, that is your formula. Area equals s squared. Okay, because when you have a square, it is side times side. Area is side times side. Well, what's side times side? Side squared. So let's plug in. They said the area is 256. So 256 equals s squared. Because where are we trying to find? Find the side. Okay. How do I get s by itself? Square root it. Square root of 256 is 16. 16 equals s. Notice I'm not going to do a minus. I'm just going to keep it positive. Why? You can't have a negative side length. So leave that as a positive 16. Now, one thing I told you guys to have memorized, remember when we did exponents? And that was the squares. So let's go over them again. Your perfect squares. 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, 121, 144, 169, 196, 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared, 5 squared, 6 squared, 7 squared, 8 squared, 9 squared, 10 squared, 11 squared, 12 squared, 13 squared, 14 squared, 15 squared, 256, 16 squared. Have those memorized up to about 16. Okay, and that's what I told you before. Have those things memorized. Especially next chapter when we start simplifying radicals, it's going to be very, very helpful. So, that is finding and solving quadratic equations. Don't listen to the book. And for these, don't put no solution because there is a solution. I want to see your imaginary numbers. And that is, excuse me, actually a Common Core standard for algebra is your imaginary numbers. Okay, so make sure we're finding those. All right, you know how to find me if you need questions.